Hello guys, you're welcome to this video. In the last video, I show you how you can use the where clause. In this video, I'll show you how you are going to use the order by clause and the having clause. Okay, so the order by clause, this is used to sort results returned in a query in either ascending or descending. Sorting is done using this clause. Okay, so when using the order by clause, you can either choose to use a descending order or ascending order to sort your values. In having clause, this clause filters the result of SQL query based on condition applied after the group. Filtering is done using this clause. The having clause and the where clause does the same work, but the difference between the having clause and the where clause is that the having clause can be used with an aggregate function, while the where clause cannot be used with an aggregate function. So let's just head on to the SQL Management Studio and solve some problems so that we can understand more about this clause. Okay, so when you have the problem, when we have a problem like this, let's look at the maximum close quantity that was sold in the month of January, April, and June. Okay, in 2014, 2015, and 2016. So let's look at the maximum close quantity that was sold in the month of January, April, June in these 3 years, which is 2014, 2015, 2016. Okay, so we start with select statement. Select maximum gross quantity. We can call that column maximum underscore gross quantity. Okay, then we put a comma, and then the get part function, so that we can have our year. So we put y occurred at, and we'll call that column here. Also, get part function, that is for months, and occurred at, and call it months from the others table. Okay, so why is showing us red here? Because we didn't set this to partial and positive. Okay, so that's settled now. So now where we want to filter it now based on the condition that they said in the month of January, April, and June. Okay, so to do that, we say date part. Let's just copy date part for months. Where date part, and we're going to use an operator called in. In January is 01, April is 04, that is the month number, and then June is 06. Okay, so and we used the AND operator to join. So we say date part now, date part for year. We copy it and we press in. Date part for year in 2014. You notice that before I list those in those years, I have to open a bracket like I did for the month. Open a bracket to write 2014, 2015, 2016, and then close the bracket. Okay, and then we are going to group by. Talked about group by in the last video. We are going to group by the date part for year and the date part for month. Be sure not to include the aggregate function maximum in the group by function. You are going to have an error. Don't include that in the group by function. Okay, so let's just clean the alias. Okay, now we are going to use the order by. We want to order it by. We want to order this value by the date part year. Okay, so we just say order by year, the alias over here. So let's run this query and see what we have. Okay, so we can now see from our output over here, we notice that we ordered by the year, which means that the year is from 2014 up to 2016. Okay, so we ordered by year. We can see our month over here, we can see the year. We ordered this query by the year, and that is why now when you write order by year and you don't put anything over here, by default it is ascending. Okay, so when you allow it this way, the server will understand that you want your result to be presented in an ascending order by default. Okay, but if you put descending, immediately after the year, you put descending at the last, and you run your query, you will have your result will start from the highest value down to the lowest value. Okay, so now that I've included DESC, which is for descending, and we run the query, we will see, we'll notice that 2016 is now up here. So it's now starting from 2016 down to 2014. Okay, so you can choose to order from any columns that you want to emphasize on. Let's say the maximum close quantity, you want it to start from the highest value down to the lowest value. You can say order by maximum. You write the alias names, the name that you rename over here, max underscore close quantity. Okay, so when you run, see what we got. Okay, so you can notice now it's starting from the highest, which is we had 12,012. That is the maximum close quantity, because we wrote descending here. So it's starting from the highest down to the lowest, which is 638. That's the least maximum close quantity, and it was in 2015. Okay, and you can see that 2016, 2014, 2014, 2015 is scattered and is not arranged because we didn't order by the year. So if we order by the year descending, it will start from 2016 down to 2014. But we order it by the maximum close quantity, and we say descending. So it's starting from the highest value down to the lowest value. Okay, so that is how to use order by, okay, when writing a query. Okay, so let's get to the having clause. So we are going to solve some problems so that we can understand what the having clause means. Okay, so we just, let's go to our PowerPoint presentation. So we said this clause, the having clause, this clause filters the result of SQL query based on condition applied after the group. So it does the same job with a wait clause, but the having clause can work with an aggregate function, but a wait clause cannot work with an aggregate function. So let's get back to the studio and solve some problem on having clause. Okay, so assuming, let's solve some problems. Assuming we want to know the numbers of times a particular sales rep ID has sold over 500 postal quantity or 800 close quantity and had made such sales more than 3 times. And what if we decide to know the name of those sales rep? So now we want to know the name of the sales rep that sold over 500 postal quantity or 800 quantity and has made such sales more than 3 times. Okay, so the sales rep that made a sale of more than 3 times and was able to sold over 500 postal quantity or 800. Select count. That's an aggregate function because we want to know the number of times the sales rep ID sold. So we use a function count. So we put the sales rep ID. And then we call it frequency of, let's just use short form, frequency of sales rep sales rep ID. We want to know the sales rep ID. So the next column is sales rep name, and you put full stop and then put name. The same way we did for sales rep ID, sales rep name, and then you say from orders table. Now we are going to join the orders table and the account table and the sales rep table in order to get this answer correct. Okay, to join a table, we say from orders join account, that is the account tables, join account on orders. By joining the account table, so we said join account on orders dot account. So at this point, to join the orders and account table, we have to check through the columns that are contained in orders. Does this column relates to the column in an account table? Okay, so the account ID relates to the column called ID in the account table. Let's just look at, if we can have a view of it. Let's just, so if you join account on orders dot account ID, you put is equal to account. Which column in accounts? Which column in accounts relates to account ID is ID. Okay. So once you've done, you join the sales rep again. Join the sales rep with the account. Join sales rep table on account. You join the sales rep table on account table now. So the column in account table that you're going to join is sales rep ID. You can see it over here. Sales rep ID is equal to sales rep table, and then we the column now, the column in the sales rep that relates to the sales rep ID of account of account table is ID. Okay, so we just click on ID. So the ID in the sales rep relates to the sales rep ID in the account table. Okay, so once you're done with that, we now say where postal quantity is greater than 500, or from the question here, or gross quantity is greater than 800. Okay, so be careful, be sure that you put is in quotation. Sure you put it in quotation. And then we are going to group this by, remember, you don't group it by an aggregate function count, you group it by other columns here. You just copy it and paste over here. And then at this point, we use the having clause. So we say having count. So the having clause, it can be used with aggregate function. Okay, but the way clause cannot use the aggregate function. Okay, so we say having count of sales rep ID, having count of sales rep ID greater than 3. So when you run this query, we have an error here. Let's check what's wrong over here. The account ID, I think we didn't put S. So let's just put and then we run the code. Okay, we see what we have. Okay, so we can see here that the frequency of sales rep and the ID and the name of the person. Okay, so we can now see from our query the output over here. Okay, so assuming, let's solve this problem. Assuming the management gave targets of 50 customers per sales rep in 2015. How many sales rep met the condition, or met the target rather? Okay, so let's try to understand this question. Assuming the management gave target of 50 customers per sales rep in 2015, how many sales rep met this target? Okay, How many sales rep make this target of customers of making a sales to up to 50 customers? Okay, made a sales to up to 50 customers in 2015. So now let's look at now. The first condition there is 2015, and we are going to use the way clause to filter the rows in 2015. Okay, and then we are going to use the having clause now to find the sales rep that made a sale to up to 50 customers. Okay, so in this question, we are going to join the orders table. We are going to join the orders table with the account tables and the sales rep table together to be able to get the answer to this question. Okay, so first of all, we start with select. So we say select count account ID. That's the account ID of that customer. Every customers have an account ID. Okay, so they said the sales rep that made a sale of over that sold to 50 customers in 2015. Okay, so now we want to write a column that will show to us the count of an account ID. Okay, the count of the account ID. So we call that column number of customers, and then we are going to write the sales rep name because we want to see the sales rep that made a sale to 50 customers. Okay, so from orders, we're going to join with account the same way we did in the other question. So we join account on orders. So the column in orders that relates to the column in account is account ID is equal to now account, and the column in account that relates to a column in orders is ID. Okay, so that's the ID over there. Okay, so we are done with that. We now join the account table now. Join sales rep table on account sales rep ID is a column in account table that relates to a column in sales rep table. ID. So now you can see that the sales rep ID relates to ID, the ID column in the sales rep table. So you have to join the column that relates to each order. Okay. So now we are done with that. So now the first condition was that the sales rep has to make these sales in 2015. So we say where that part here occurred at is equal to 2015. Okay. Then we'll group this by the sales rep name. Group it by sales rep. Now we are going to use the having count. So you must note that it depends on the question. The question can ask for the sum. The second condition can be sum. So in this one, you're going to use having sum. But for this question, they are looking for count of customers over 50. So we say count account ID greater than 50. Okay, we're looking for the account ID that is greater than 50, which is the number of customers that is greater than 50. Okay, so let's run this query and see what we got. So we can see from our output over here, the result that we have, that the number of this is the number of customers, which is from 50. Marianne Florentino, which is a sales rep name, sold in 2015, sold to Mariana Florentino in 2015, sold to a customer that is more than 50, which is 53 customers. Okay, Misha Woodford made a sale to customer that is 51. Helwood George made a sales to a customer that is over 50, which is 53. Okay, so any sales rep name that did not make sales to this number of customers that is from 50 up will not be included. So it must be greater than 50. It must not be equal to 50, but it must be greater than 50, which is 51. So you can see from the list over here, we have values that are greater than 50. Okay, so we have come to the end of solving problem on having clause. See you in the next video.